You're listening to the Live Free podcast. I'm your host, Christine, certified life coach, pain to power mentor, and creator of Embody You Mindset Mastery School. I'm here today to discuss living life after disease, disaster, or adversity, to discuss living life fully once again, a life of hope, peace, and resiliency, a life fully embodied. I utilize the lessons that I learned going through not one, but two primary cancers. I'm here today to guide you to the life of your dreams, turn your pain into power, and lead you back to yourself. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Live Free podcast.
I want to talk about the fear of recurrence and how it can play with your mind and cause you so much pain, all the while doing nothing for you and being a little bit of a trick. So what do I mean by that? I have feared recurrence in regards to my cancer multiple times throughout my life and throughout my remission stage. And really in the beginning, the first year was the most painful and most confusing. And so many of us feel the exact same way. We feel unsure and we don't know how to take it. No doctor will tell us that we're cured as much as we want to hear those words. They'll just say remission. Or they'll say things like, it appears at this time that there is no cancer in your body. That's the one I got. I'm like, okay, thanks. And it causes us so much pain because the trauma that we've just gone through is equated to the future self, how we would feel if this cancer came back. So all of that unsuredness, the fear of losing our lives, the trauma that happens when you are diagnosed and you picture your family without you, and you're not sure how they're going to do X, Y, and Z without you in your life. You picture fear of pain, picture fear of dying. You question things like, is there another side? What is that? What is it like? You start to have those conversations with yourself. All of these things are so traumatic. Like they talk about big T trauma, little t trauma, and all these different types of traumas in life. And they talk about how veterans of war go through trauma, but it isn't talked about enough how much trauma a cancer victim goes through. And I know that there is absolutely a lot of empathy and thought towards people who go through cancer, but there isn't quite enough support after the fact, which is exactly why my job exists. But I digress. So this fear of recurrence, you think about how you felt and how horrible it was. And so when you fear recurrence, you're fearing all of that, right? All of the minute when you were first diagnosed, all of when everything went dark and you couldn't focus on what that person was saying anymore. All of those moments that cause that big trauma in your life come flooding back. And so then you fear those emotions. What's wild is that we become so consumed by the fear of recurrence that we forget to live the life that we were offered. So I talked a little bit about this in some past trainings. I talk about how in the beginning, you may need to just throw yourself into something that you are obsessed with, something that you love. And that might be healthy eating, that might be exercise, anything that gives you a sense of control. And that sense of control is really important in the beginning, because this loss of control that we have and this extreme fear that we have, it needs to be channeled into something that is going to create for us a feeling of ease. And that may be the opposite for you. It might not be channeling your fear into obsessing into a new and exciting obsession. So like, the healthy eating or the exercises, that might not be something that you want. It might be the opposite. It might be learning to calm the mind and stop thinking about it. It might be, learning meditation techniques or whatever else. And I mean, truly, I wish there was a one size fits all way of healing. I would tell you it, but there isn't. We are individual people, and it's up to us to get quiet and get into a place where you've calmed your nervous system and your body enough that you can ask yourself the question, what do I need? Do I need to hyper focus on preventing recurrence? Does that feel good to me? Or do I need to learn how to focus my mind elsewhere into a new and exciting way to move forward in life? Does that feel good to me? None of these things are wrong. Everyone's always looking for this, step one, do this, step two, do this. I mean, life isn't a recipe card. There is no cup of sugar. It's what's your version? What are you making? Is it salty? Is it savory? Is it sweet? What is it that you're wanting to create for yourself and in your life, and what feels expansive and helpful to you? And so it's about following that. And in my last training, I gave some tips and tricks that really helped me. But it truly is so much to do with what helps you. Okay? So this fear that we have that takes over our lives may need a period of time where we are throwing ourselves into something. But after a while, the fear will subside on its own. It will, and it always does. Time heals. As corny as it sounds, it does. And slowly but surely, with the right actions and the right efforts, and when I say right, I mean right to you. With the right actions and the right efforts, that fear of recurrence will begin to subside. Now, what's interesting is my news that I have to share with you today. And what's interesting is that I have leveled up in what I can educate you on. And that is when recurrence potentially strikes. And so that news is that my most recent MRI came back inconclusive. There is a 4 millimeter mass that they're calling a tumor with a buy rate of 3. What that means is basically on the scoring system, it is neither benign and it is neither malignant. It is literally on the fence. We don't know what it is. It's a little too small to tell. And at first, that fear of recurrence came whooshing back to me. That fear of like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Staring up the ceiling, planning, how am I going to have my husband no longer have grief to this degree? How am I going to teach him how to love again so that he doesn't fall apart? Staring up the ceiling and wondering, what's it going to be like? Where's the pain? What are they going to have to cut out next? What if I don't live? All of those emotions, that big trauma came rushing back. And all this fear of what it was going to be like to go through chemotherapy and all of these things came rushing back. And that's the truth, it did. But what's really interesting is that after a period of about 72 hours, maybe plus or minus another 24, like 4 days-ish, and this is different for everybody, I realized something. And it is that I have done this before. I have faced this monster. And I'm not saying that it is malignant, but it's suspect. It's suspect that 2 years later, I should have a mass that shows up that is too small to tell whether or not it's malignant or not. It is now in my other breast. And it's suspect. It could be nothing. It could be absolutely nothing. But, at this point, all I'm going to say is that what I think it most likely is the beginning of a recurrence. And anyway, so going through those emotions over the last few days, and now it's been about a week and a half or so, what's been really, really interesting is that I realized that I've done this before. I'm nothing like the human being that I was when I first started. Not to say she was weak. It's that she was naive to the process. She didn't know what to expect. She didn't know what was on the other side. And so every single grueling step in my journey was grueling, because it was, oh my God, this, what does that mean? Google this, and all that. And I realized I've done this before. I know what this looks like. I know what this process is like. And so, of course, I'm well aware that I'm fortunate that, as far as we know, it seems that if it's even cancer, it's very small and probably workable. It's not currently, as far as we know, not that we've tested, and I'm sure we will, it's not currently, as far as we know, in the bones, the liver, or the brain. And so I know that there are recurrences that are scarier than this. I'm not under any illusion. But nevertheless, I do understand that if this is a recurrence, that I'm going to be okay. And that I'm going to be able to do all the steps that are necessary that I did last time, maybe more, maybe less, and be able to do all the steps and just get through like I did last time and be stronger like happened last time. And so this overarching fear that for a year took over my life, and then, of course, subsided. I've been in remission now for two and a half years. And of course, subsided for a year and a half. And I was able to apply all of the tips and tricks that I mentioned in the last training that did, in fact, nearly clear my mind entirely. I no longer really thought about it much at all. But in that first year, I lost so much time. And that's okay, because I was in a grief process. Loss implies that I did something wrong. I didn't do anything wrong. I was in my process, whatever my process needed to be. And so it was exactly as it needed to be. But nevertheless, I did lose a lot of time when I could have been enjoying. But instead, I was worrying. And all of that buildup to get here at this very moment, speaking to you, where I could very well have cancer again, and I'm not scared. Really at all. I know that sounds wild, but I'm not. And it may not be, but on the assumption that it is, because of it's fairly suspect, I'm not scared. I'm actually kind of like, okay, well, what do we do here? What's next? What do we do? What steps are we going to take? Where are we going to get to? Will I be able to go to this concert in August? How's this all working? And this fear that was so big, I'm realizing is fallen flat. And so the saying, the only thing to fear is fear itself, is truly never been more true to me than it is right now. And so I'm kind of fumbling through my emotions here, speaking to you so that if you're fearing recurrence, maybe, just maybe, if you come to this juncture where you may have a recurrence, maybe, just maybe, you will find out that you're not that scared. Maybe you'll find out that you're tougher than you think. Maybe you'll find out that in this next stage of life, you're a different person than you were in this past stage of life. And maybe you might realize that there is nothing to fear but fear itself. Because the amount of time that you're losing fearing recurrence is you fearing being scared. Do you see what I'm saying? You're fearing the fear that you will feel. But here I am, facing something potential, and I'm not scared. I'm calmer than I've been in a very long time. It's extraordinary what we have, this ability to persevere and be resilient in the face of any sort of adversity. But we're really good as humans at fearing facing adversity, fearing how bad it could be. So I invite you, if you're fearing recurrence, let's start to let that shit go. Because if you have to face some sort of demon, you are going to find out that you're way stronger than you think. And you're going to get through. And yeah, there are very big recurrences to be scared of, and I understand that. But there's medical advances that are extraordinary that are curing stage 4 cancers right now. I know people who are getting cured of stage 4 cancers right now, okay? So, not that it's a blessing to have a recurrence, but if you were to have a recurrence, what a blessing to be alive at this current time in life, because at this current time, medical sciences are curing these recurrences, okay? So let's begin to diffuse this ticking time bomb of fear that is sitting on your heart and start to live fully. Start to live embodied. Start to live every moment. Pull that fear in, as I spoke about in a previous training. Pull that fear in and utilize it as a reason for why you're finally gonna take the jump. You're gonna skydive, or you're gonna take that trip that you always said that you were gonna live. Living unadulterated, living unhinged, living untethered, which is a wonderful book, by the way. It's called The Untethered Soul. And if you can live untethered because you understand and respect that there is a fear present, but you're going to transmute and alchemize it into the life that you want because you realize that life's short now, then you are truly free. So all this to say that we're all so much tougher than we think we are, including me, who I wasn't even really thinking about recurrence really much at all anymore, because I had done my journey. And I really wasn't thinking about it much anymore. But that's okay. Now I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about it because it could be my reality. And it could also not be. But it's suspect, okay? It's suspect. And I'll keep you in the loop with what's going on and with my journey and whether or not my health is A-okay, or whether or not we're looking at surgeries, or whether or not, it's here and gone again, or whatever it is. It's going to be fine. And so I hope that me sharing with you my innermost thoughts has inspired you in some small way. Hope you have a beautiful day, and that you go out there and you live untethered and utilize your fear to live your life, a life that you've always dreamed of.
Thank you so much for listening. If you found expansion with this last episode, then that means that others will too. And the best way to get the word out about the podcast is by leaving a review. I would be so grateful if you could leave me a review and let me know how you felt about the podcast. Included in the show notes will be everything that we talked about today, including all of my transformative programs. Change is just on the horizon, my friend.